Maya had promised herself she was done with love. After her marriage fell apart 2 years ago, she rebuilt her entire life from scratch. At 34, she finally felt stable. She had her little apartment in the city, a job she actually enjoyed as a marketing consultant, and a routine that kept her grounded. No drama, no heartbreak, no complications, just peace. Her friends kept trying to set her up on dates, but she always found an excuse. She'd scroll through dating apps late at night but never actually met anyone. The truth was, she liked her quiet life. She'd wake up at 6, make her coffee exactly how she wanted it, go for runs whenever she felt like it, and spend weekends reading or watching movies without having to check with anyone else. It felt good to belong only to herself. Then one Friday evening, everything shifted. Her friend Lisa had been bugging her for weeks to come to an art gallery opening. Maya almost said no, like she usually did. But something made her change her mind that day. Maybe it was the unusually warm evening, or maybe she was just tired of making excuses. She threw on a simple black dress, grabbed her jacket, and headed out. The gallery was crowded with people holding wine glasses and pretending to understand abstract paintings. Maya grabbed a drink and wandered around, already planning her escape in about 30 minutes. She stopped in front of a large canvas covered in blues and grays, trying to figure out what it was supposed to be. "Looks like a storm, doesn't it?" She turned and found herself looking at a man with the warmest brown eyes she'd ever seen. He had this easy smile that made you want to smile back without even thinking about it. He was tall, dressed casually in jeans and a button-down shirt, with slightly messy dark hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it a few times. "Or maybe just someone having a really bad day," Maya replied, surprising herself. She wasn't usually this quick with strangers. He laughed, a real laugh that reached his eyes. "I'm Alex, by the way." And yeah, could definitely be that too. They started talking, and Maya completely forgot about her planned escape. Alex was an architect, and the way he talked about buildings and spaces made even the most boring topic sound fascinating. He'd designed a community center in the south side of the city, and you could hear the pride in his voice when he described how neighborhood kids used it every day. But they didn't just talk about work. They discovered they both loved jazz, the kind most people thought was too weird or old-fashioned. They'd both read the same obscure book about urban planning that nobody else seemed to know about. He made her laugh when he told her about the time he accidentally designed a building feature that looked completely inappropriate from a certain angle, and the client only noticed after construction started. Time disappeared. Maya glanced at her phone at some point and realized they'd been talking for over 3 hours. The gallery was starting to empty out, and the staff were giving them looks that said they wanted to close up. "I should probably go," Maya said, even though she didn't want to. "Yeah, me too," Alex replied, but he didn't move. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. "Can I get your number?" he asked. "I'd really like to see you again." Maya hesitated. Her brain was screaming at her to be careful, to protect herself, to remember all the reasons she'd sworn off this kind of thing. But her heart was doing something else entirely, beating faster than it had in years. She gave him her number. The drive home felt strange. Maya's hands were shaking slightly on the steering wheel, and she couldn't stop replaying their conversation in her head. Every joke, every moment their eyes met, every accidental brush of hands when they both reached for the wine bottle on the nearby table. She felt like a teenager again, all nervous and excited and confused. When she got home, she kicked off her shoes and flopped onto her couch, staring at the ceiling. What was happening to her? She'd talked to plenty of men over the past 2 years. Some had even asked her out. But she'd never felt this fluttery, anxious feeling in her chest. This feeling like something important had just happened, like her carefully ordered world had just tilted slightly off its axis. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Alex from the gallery. Just wanted to make sure I didn't dream that whole conversation. Had a really great time tonight." Maya found herself grinning at her phone like an idiot. She typed and deleted about 5 different responses before settling on something simple. "Definitely real. I had a great time too." His response came almost immediately. "Good. I was worried I'd talked too much about building permits. Want to grab coffee this week?" They texted back and forth for another hour. Easy, comfortable conversation that flowed like they'd known each other for years instead of hours. When Maya finally put her phone down and tried to sleep, her mind wouldn't quiet down. She kept thinking about his smile, his laugh, the way he really listened when she talked instead of just waiting for his turn to speak. The next morning, she woke up to a good morning text from him. Her stomach did a little flip. She told herself to calm down, to take things slow, to be reasonable. But when she looked in the mirror while brushing her teeth, she couldn't stop smiling. They met for coffee 3 days later at a little place near her office. Coffee turned into lunch. Lunch turned into a walk through the park. That walk turned into dinner plans for the weekend. And just like that, Alex started becoming part of her life. By the end of their first week of knowing each other, they'd seen each other 4 times. Maya kept telling herself she should slow down, create some space, not get too invested too quickly. But every time her phone lit up with his name, every time she heard his voice, every time they made plans to meet, something in her chest loosened and tightened at the same time. Her friend Lisa noticed immediately. "You're different," she said over lunch one day. "You're all glowy and distracted. This is about that guy from the gallery, isn't it?" Maya tried to play it cool, but she couldn't help smiling. "Maybe. He's just really easy to talk to, you know?" Lisa raised an eyebrow. "Uh-huh, just easy to talk to. That's why you've checked your phone about 15 times since we sat down." Maya put her phone face down on the table, embarrassed. But 5 minutes later, she was checking it again. That night, lying in bed after another long phone call with Alex, Maya stared at the ceiling and wondered what she was getting herself into. She felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. Every conversation left her wanting more. Every goodbye made her count the hours until she'd see him again. It felt amazing. It felt terrifying. It felt like standing at the edge of something vast and unknown, knowing that once you stepped forward, there was no going back. She fell asleep with her phone next to her pillow, already looking forward to his good morning text. 3 months passed like 3 weeks. Maya couldn't remember the last time life had felt this full, this colorful, this intense. Alex had become the center of her universe without her quite realizing when it happened. She woke up every morning to his texts. Good morning messages with coffee emojis, random thoughts he'd had in the middle of the night, links to songs he thought she'd like. Her first instinct upon opening her eyes wasn't to check the weather or the news anymore. It was to see what Alex had sent her. They saw each other almost every day. Sometimes it was just for an hour between meetings, squeezed into their busy schedules. Alex would drive 20 minutes across the city just to have lunch with her, and she'd rearrange client calls to make it work. Other times they'd spend entire weekends together, losing track of time in that way where Sunday evening would arrive and they'd both be shocked the weekend was already over. Maya's apartment, which used to be her peaceful sanctuary, started to feel empty when Alex wasn't there. She'd find herself staring at the spot on her couch where he always sat, or looking at the coffee mug he used, or sleeping on his side of the bed because it still smelled like him. At work, she'd catch herself zoning out during meetings, thinking about something funny he'd said or replaying their last conversation. Her boss had to call her name twice during a presentation once, and she felt her face burn with embarrassment. But even that couldn't stop her mind from wandering back to Alex. They texted constantly throughout the day. Little updates about everything and nothing. Just saw a dog that looked exactly like the one we saw last week. This client meeting is so boring I might actually die. Counting down until I see you tonight. The conversations were endless, flowing from morning until late at night. Their phone calls stretched past midnight regularly. Maya would be exhausted the next day, running on 4 hours of sleep, but it never seemed to matter in the moment. Talking to Alex felt more important than sleep, more necessary than rest. They'd talk about everything, their voices getting quieter and sleepier, until one of them would finally say, "We should probably sleep," but then they'd keep talking anyway. The physical connection was unlike anything Maya had experienced before. Every touch felt electric. Every kiss left her wanting more. But it wasn't just the passion that got to her. It was the way he'd reach for her hand while driving, or pull her close while they watched movies, or kiss her forehead when he thought she was sleeping. She felt safe and on fire at the same time. Her friends started commenting on how much she'd changed. "We never see you anymore," Lisa said one day when Maya canceled their weekly dinner plans for the 3rd time in a row. There was hurt in her voice that Maya tried to ignore. "I know, I'm sorry. Things have just been really busy with work and Alex," Lisa finished. "It's always Alex now." Maya felt defensive. "I'm just happy. Isn't that a good thing?" Lisa sighed. "Of course it is. I just miss my friend." Maya promised to do better, to make more time for other people. But when Alex called that evening asking if she wanted to come over, she said yes without hesitation. She'd see Lisa next week, or the week after. There was always time later. She stopped going to her yoga classes, the ones she used to love. Her running shoes gathered dust by the door. The book club she'd joined after her divorce? She couldn't remember the last time she'd gone. Her sister called less frequently, tired of Maya cutting conversation short or being distracted when they talked. But when she was with Alex, none of that seemed to matter. He made everything else fade into the background. His attention was like sunlight, and she found herself constantly turning toward it, craving it, needing it. They had their first real fight about something stupid. Maya couldn't even remember what started it. But the feeling of being disconnected from him even for a few hours was physically painful. She felt sick to her stomach, unable to focus on anything else. When he finally called to apologize, the relief was so intense she almost cried. That should have been a warning sign. But Maya was too deep in it to see clearly. She started keeping her phone on loud at all times, jumping every time it buzzed with a notification. Her heart would leap hoping it was him, then crash with disappointment when it wasn't. She'd check their message thread obsessively, scrolling back through old conversations, looking at photos they'd taken together. One evening, Alex mentioned casually that he had a work trip coming up, a week-long conference in another state. Maya felt her chest tighten immediately. "A whole week?" she asked, trying to keep her voice light. "Yeah, unfortunately, but we can video call every night. It'll go by fast, but the thought of 7 days without seeing him felt impossible." Maya spent that night lying awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling a rising sense of panic that she couldn't quite explain. It was just a week. People went longer than a week without seeing each other all the time. Why did this feel like such a huge deal? She found herself getting anxious about stupid things. What if he met someone at the conference? What if the distance made him realize he didn't miss her as much as she missed him? What if a week apart showed him that he was better off without her? Maya recognized these thoughts as irrational, but she couldn't stop them. They buzzed around her head like angry wasps, impossible to swat away. The week he was gone was torture. They texted and called, but it wasn't enough. Maya felt hollow, like part of her was missing. She went through the motions at work, smiled when she was supposed to, but inside she felt empty and anxious and incomplete. She realized, lying alone in her bed on the 4th night of his trip, that she couldn't remember what her life had been like before Alex. That scared her more than she wanted to admit. When had she stopped being a whole person on her own? When had she started needing someone else just to feel normal? But when he came back and pulled her into his arms at the airport, all those worries evaporated. This was right. This was perfect. This was love, wasn't it? 6 months into the relationship, Maya's carefully rebuilt life was unraveling, and she was only just beginning to notice. It started with small things. She snapped at a coworker for a minor mistake, her voice sharper than she intended. The woman looked shocked, hurt even, and Maya immediately felt terrible. She apologized, blaming it on lack of sleep, which was true technically. She'd been up until 3 in the morning texting with Alex, talking about nothing and everything, unable to say goodnight even though she had an important client meeting the next morning. That meeting didn't go well. Maya showed up with dark circles under her eyes, her presentation half prepared. She stumbled through her pitch, distracted and unfocused. The client looked unimpressed. Her boss pulled her aside afterward with concern in his eyes. "Is everything okay? This isn't like you." Maya assured him everything was fine, just a rough week. But she knew it was more than that. She'd been late to work 4 times in the past month. Not terribly late, just 10 or 15 minutes, but enough for people to notice. She'd forgotten deadlines, missed details in reports, lost track of important emails. Her work, which used to be something she took pride in, was slipping through her fingers like sand. At home, her apartment was a mess. Dishes piled up in the sink because she was always at Alex's place. Mail sat unopened on her counter for weeks. She'd run out of clean clothes multiple times because she kept forgetting to do laundry. Her plants were dying from neglect. Brown leaves scattered on the windowsill. But the worst part was how she felt when Alex wasn't around. Empty. Incomplete. Like she was just waiting for real life to start again when she could see him or hear his voice. One evening, Alex told her he needed to go out of town again for work. Just 5 days this time. Maya felt panic rise in her chest, immediate and overwhelming. 5 days? Her voice came out higher than she intended. Yeah, I know it's not ideal, but it's an important project. I'll be back before you know it. That night, alone in her apartment, Maya couldn't settle. She paced from room to room, picking up her phone every few minutes to check if Alex had texted. He had just an hour ago, but she read the message again anyway, searching for something she couldn't name. She tried to watch a movie but couldn't focus. Tried to read, but the words blurred together. She felt restless, anxious, like something was crawling under her skin. This wasn't normal. This wasn't healthy. She knew that somewhere in the back of her mind, but acknowledging it felt dangerous. The next morning, Maya found herself standing in front of her bathroom mirror, really looking at herself for the first time in months. Dark circles under her eyes. She'd lost weight without meaning to, forgetting to eat meals when Alex wasn't around to eat with her. Her hair needed a cut. When was the last time she'd gone to the salon? She couldn't remember. She opened the drawer where she used to keep her journal, the one her therapist had encouraged her to use after her divorce. It was buried under old receipts and hair ties, untouched for months. She pulled it out and flipped through the pages, reading entries from a year ago. That person seemed like a stranger, someone who went running every morning, who had dinner with friends, who had hobbies and interests and a life that didn't revolve around one person. When had she stopped being that person? Maya sat on the edge of her bathtub and started writing. The words came out in a messy stream of consciousness, barely legible. She wrote about how she couldn't remember the last time she'd gone a full day without texting Alex, how the thought of him not responding immediately made her stomach hurt, how she'd canceled on Lisa 4 times in a row, how her sister had stopped calling as much, how she felt like she was disappearing, piece by piece, into someone else's life. The most terrifying sentence she wrote was this: I don't exist anymore without him. She stared at those words for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and called her therapist's office. Dr. Patel, the woman who'd helped her through her divorce, who she hadn't seen in over a year. The receptionist said there was an opening next week. I'll take it, Maya said. That week crawled by. Alex left for his trip, and Maya forced herself to sit with the discomfort of missing him instead of texting him every 5 minutes. It was harder than she expected. Her fingers kept reaching for her phone automatically. Muscle memory from months of constant contact. She had to physically put her phone in another room just to stop herself from checking it. She went for a run, her first in months. Her body felt weak, unfamiliar. She could only make it 2 miles before she had to stop, bent over with her hands on her knees, gasping. She used to run 5 miles easily. She called Lisa and apologized for being such a terrible friend. Lisa was quiet for a moment, then said, I'm glad you called. I've been worried about you. They met for dinner, just the 2 of them. At first, Maya kept checking her phone, but Lisa gently called her out on it. I'm right here. Can you just be here with me? Maya put her phone away and tried to be present. It was harder than it should have been. But as they talked, really talked for the first time in months, Maya felt something loosen in her chest. She'd missed this. She'd missed having friends. She'd missed being someone other than Alex's girlfriend. The appointment with Dr. Patel finally arrived. Maya sat in the familiar office with its soft lighting and comfortable chairs and felt like she'd come home after being lost. Tell me what's going on, Dr. Patel said gently, and Maya told her everything. The constant texting, the inability to focus without him, the panic when he was away, the way she'd let everything else in her life fall apart. She talked until she ran out of words, and then she sat there in silence waiting for judgment. Dr. Patel didn't look shocked or disapproving. She just nodded like she'd heard stories like this 1,000 times before. What you're describing sounds like emotional dependency, she said carefully. The intensity you're feeling, the anxiety when you're apart, the way you've organized your entire life around him. These are patterns we often see in addictive behaviors. The word addiction hit Maya like cold water. But I love him, she said weakly. I'm sure you do. But love and addiction aren't the same thing, even though they can feel similar. Healthy love enhances your life. It doesn't replace it. Maya felt tears burning in her eyes. So what do I do? Dr. Patel leaned forward. You learn to find yourself again. You rebuild the parts of your life that don't involve him. You figure out who you are when you're alone, and you learn to be okay with that person. It sounded impossible, but as Maya drove home that day, she knew Dr. Patel was right. She'd lost herself somewhere along the way, and if she didn't find herself again soon, there might not be anything left to find. Understanding the problem didn't make fixing it any easier. Maya felt like she was trying to quit something her body still desperately craved. She started small. She set rules for herself. No texting Alex before 9 in the morning. No checking her phone during work meetings. At least 2 evenings a week spent alone doing things she used to enjoy. On paper, these seemed like reasonable, simple boundaries. In practice, they felt impossible. The first morning she didn't text Alex right away. She lasted exactly 47 minutes before giving in. Her fingers literally shook as she typed out a good morning message. When he didn't respond immediately, she felt sick with anxiety. What if he was upset? What if he thought she didn't care anymore? He texted back an hour later with a smiley face, completely unbothered. Maya realized the panic had been entirely in her own head. She signed up for her old yoga class, the Tuesday evening one she used to love. When Tuesday came, Alex called and asked if she wanted to grab dinner. Maya almost said yes automatically, the word already forming on her lips. But she stopped herself. I can't tonight. I have yoga. There was a pause. Oh, okay. Is everything all right? Yeah, everything's fine. I just haven't been in a while and I really need to go. Another pause. Okay, maybe tomorrow then. After they hung up, Maya felt guilty and anxious. She almost called him back to cancel yoga, but she forced herself to go, showing up to the studio with her old mat and a chest full of nervous energy. The class was hard. Her body had forgotten the poses and her mind wouldn't stop wandering. But afterward, sitting in the parking lot with sweaty hair and shaky legs, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Proud of herself. She started seeing Dr. Patel weekly. In those sessions, they dug into patterns Maya had been carrying for years, maybe her whole life. The way she'd always felt like she needed to be needed. The way she measured her worth by how much someone else wanted her around. The deep fear that she wasn't enough on her own. Where do you think that comes from? Dr. Patel asked. Maya thought about her childhood, about parents who were always busy, always distracted. About feeling invisible unless she was doing something for someone else. About learning early that love was something you had to earn, not something you just got for existing. I think I've always been afraid of being alone, Maya admitted quietly. Not just physically alone, but like fundamentally alone. Like if someone isn't actively choosing me, then I don't matter. And Alex choosing you makes you feel like you matter? Yeah. When he texts me or wants to see me or tells me he loves me, I feel real. I feel important. But when he's not there, she trailed off. You feel like you disappear, Dr. Patel finished gently. Maya nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. How do I stop feeling like that? By learning that you matter, whether anyone is choosing you or not. By building a life that feels meaningful even when you're alone in it. Dr. Patel suggested Maya start keeping track of her urges to text or call Alex, to notice what triggered them. Maya bought a small notebook and started writing down every time she reached for her phone. The patterns were revealing. Bored at work? Text Alex, anxious about something? Text Alex, happy about something? Text Alex, sad, angry, excited, nervous? Text Alex, text Alex, text Alex. He'd become her solution to every feeling, her escape from every uncomfortable moment. One entry just said, felt lonely even though he texted me 5 minutes ago. What is wrong with me? She started forcing herself to sit with difficult feelings instead of immediately reaching out to him. When she felt anxious, she'd take deep breaths instead of calling him. When she felt lonely, she'd go for a walk or call a friend instead of texting him. It was exhausting. Every instinct in her body screamed to just contact him, to get that hit of relief and connection. But slowly, very slowly, the urges became slightly less intense. Alex noticed the change, and he didn't like it. You seem different lately, he said one evening. They were at his apartment, but Maya had mentioned she needed to leave by 9 to get enough sleep. Different how? I don't know, distant? Like you're pulling away from me. Maya felt guilt crash over her. I'm not pulling away. I'm just trying to have better balance in my life. Balance? He sounded hurt. I thought what we had was good. I thought you were happy. I am happy. But I need to have other things too. Friends and hobbies and time to myself. That doesn't mean I love you less. But even as she said it, she could hear the confusion in his voice, see the hurt in his eyes. He didn't understand why she was suddenly changing the rules of their relationship. And honestly, Maya wasn't sure she could explain it in a way that would make sense to him. Their arguments became more frequent. Small things would spiral into bigger fights. Alex would get frustrated when she didn't respond to texts right away, or when she said no to plans because she'd made other commitments. Maya would get defensive, feeling like she couldn't win no matter what she did. One night, they had a particularly bad fight. Alex said she was being selfish, that she was sabotaging what they had for no good reason. Maya tried to explain about dependency and boundaries and self-care, but the words came out wrong, tangled and defensive. "Did I do something wrong?" Alex asked, and there was real pain in his voice. "Because if I did, just tell me. I'll fix it." "You didn't do anything wrong," Maya said, exhausted. "That's what I'm trying to tell you. This isn't about you. It's about me and how I lose myself in relationships." "So what, you're saying we should break up?" "No. I'm saying I need to figure out how to be with you without disappearing into you." But Alex just looked confused and hurt, and Maya felt like she was trying to explain color to someone who'd only ever seen in black and white. That night, Maya went home and cried until she felt empty. She looked at herself in the mirror, mascara streaking down her face, and made a decision. She called Alex the next morning. "I think we need to take a break," she said, her voice shaking. "Not forever. Just for a while. I need time to figure myself out, and I can't do that while we're together." "How long?" His voice was flat, hurt. 3 months. "No contact. I know that sounds harsh, but I need real space to work on myself." There was a long silence. Then, "If that's what you need, it is. I love you, Alex, but I don't know who I am when I'm with you, and that's my problem to fix, not yours." After they hung up, Maya felt like she'd cut off a limb. The pain was physical, real, overwhelming. She spent the rest of that day curled up on her couch, crying and questioning whether she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. But underneath the grief, there was something else. Something small and fragile, but real: relief. The first week without Alex was the hardest. Maya felt like she was going through actual withdrawal, which Dr. Patel told her wasn't far from the truth. Her brain had gotten used to the constant dopamine hits from their connection, and now it was protesting loudly. She'd wake up in the morning and reach for her phone automatically, then remember. No good morning texts, no random thoughts shared over coffee, no plans to look forward to, just silence and empty space where he used to be. Some mornings she lay in bed crying before work. Other mornings she felt numb, going through the motions like a robot. She'd catch herself typing out messages to him dozens of times a day, then forcing herself to delete them. Her thumb would hover over his name in her contacts, and she'd have to physically put her phone in a drawer to stop herself from calling. But she didn't break the no-contact rule. Not once. Dr. Patel had warned her it would be hard. "You're not just losing a person. You're losing the coping mechanism you've been using to avoid dealing with yourself. That's going to hurt." And it did hurt. God, it hurt. But Maya was determined to sit with the hurt instead of running from it. She started filling her time with things she'd abandoned. She went back to yoga regularly, her body slowly remembering the poses. She signed up for a painting class, something she'd always wanted to try but never made time for. She was terrible at it, her first attempts looking like a child's messy scribbles. But there was something freeing about being bad at something and doing it anyway. She reconnected with Lisa properly, having coffee dates and long phone calls where she actually listened instead of being distracted. She called her sister more, rebuilding the relationship she'd let atrophy. She even joined a book club in her neighborhood, forcing herself to show up even when she felt like hiding at home. The loneliness was intense at first. Maya would come home to her empty apartment and feel the silence pressing in on her like a physical weight. She'd cook dinner for one and eat it on her couch, fighting the urge to text Alex about her day. She'd lie in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, missing the sound of his voice before sleep. But slowly, something started to shift. She began to notice things about herself she'd forgotten, like how she actually enjoyed cooking when she took her time with it, trying new recipes and making a mess in the kitchen. How she loved Sunday mornings alone with coffee and a book, sunlight streaming through her windows. How walking through the park by herself was peaceful instead of lonely once she stopped fighting it. Dr. Patel had her start a new practice. Every evening, write down 3 things she'd done that day that had nothing to do with anyone else. At first, it was hard to think of 3 things. But gradually, the list grew longer. Finished a painting in class. Went for a run. Made myself a nice dinner. Called an old friend. Read 2 chapters of my book. Organized my closet. Small things. Ordinary things. But they were hers. In therapy, they worked through the deeper issues. The childhood wounds that had made her believe she was only valuable if someone else valued her. The patterns from her marriage that she'd never fully processed. The fear of being alone that had driven her from one relationship to straight into another, without ever pausing to figure out who she was in between. You jumped from your ex-husband to Alex so fast, Dr. Patel observed one session. You never gave yourself time to just be alone, to be a whole person without someone else defining you. I was scared, Maya admitted. After my divorce, I felt like such a failure, like I was broken. When Alex came along and made me feel special again, it was like proof that I wasn't broken after all, that I was still worth something. But you placed all your worth in his hands. That's a lot of power to give another person. Maya nodded. I know that now. I just didn't see it then. She started doing things that scared her, small acts of independence that proved she could exist on her own. She went to a movie by herself, something that used to feel pathetic but now felt empowering. She took a weekend trip alone, driving to the coast and spending 2 days with just her own thoughts for company. She ate dinner at a nice restaurant, solo, bringing a book and enjoying her meal without feeling self-conscious. Each small victory built on the last. She was learning to be comfortable in her own skin, to enjoy her own company. The constant need to be in contact with someone, to be validated by someone else's attention, started to loosen its grip. Around the 2-month mark, Maya realized she'd gone an entire day without thinking about Alex. Not obsessively, anyway. He crossed her mind a few times, but it didn't consume her. She didn't feel that desperate ache in her chest. She just thought, I wonder how he's doing, and then moved on with her day. That night, she wrote in her journal, I think I'm starting to find myself again, and I actually like who I'm finding. The 3-month mark arrived faster than she expected. Alex had reached out exactly once, 2 weeks in, asking if she was okay. Maya had asked him to respect the no-contact period, and he had. Now the time was up, and she knew he'd probably call soon. She was nervous, but not panicked, not desperate. She'd survived 3 months without him, and she'd done more than survive. She'd grown. When his call came, Maya took a deep breath before answering. Hey. Hey. His voice was cautious, uncertain. How are you? I'm good. Actually good. How are you? They agreed to meet for coffee the next day at the same cafe where they'd had their first date a year ago. Maya got there early, ordering her usual and finding a table by the window. When Alex walked in, her heart did skip a beat. He looked the same, maybe a bit tired, but those warm brown eyes were just as she remembered. They hugged, and it felt familiar but different somehow. Less desperate, less like she needed it to breathe. They talked for hours, honest in a way they'd never quite been before. Alex admitted he'd struggled with her pulling away, that he'd been hurt and confused, but he'd also done some thinking of his own. He'd realized he'd gotten too comfortable letting Maya revolve around him, that he'd maybe liked being needed that much even though it wasn't healthy. I missed you, he said. Like, really missed you. But I also kind of needed the space too, even though I didn't want to admit it at first. Maya smiled. I missed you too. But I also needed to remember that I'm okay without you. Not better without you, just okay. Whole on my own. So where does that leave us? Maya thought about it carefully. I want to try again if you do, but differently this time. I need to keep my own life, my own friends, my own space, and I need you to be okay with that. I am, Alex said. I want to try too, just healthier this time. They started over slowly. They saw each other once or twice a week instead of every day. Maya kept her yoga classes, her painting, her friendships. Alex respected her boundaries when she said she needed a night alone. They texted but not constantly. They called but not until midnight every night. It felt different. Less intense maybe, but more sustainable, more real. There were moments when Maya felt the old patterns trying to creep back in. The urge to text him constantly, to make him the center of everything, to lose herself in the relationship again. But now she recognized those urges for what they were, and she could choose differently. A year later, they were still together. But Maya maintained her separate life, her own identity. She had dinner with friends regularly. She took painting classes and went on solo weekend trips sometimes. She knew who she was outside of the relationship, and she protected that fiercely. One evening, lying next to Alex after dinner, she felt content in a way she never had before. Not the desperate, clinging, intense feeling from the beginning. Just peaceful contentment. She loved him deeply, but she didn't need him to feel complete. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Just how different this feels from a year ago." "Better different." He smiled and kissed her forehead. "Yeah, it is better." Maya realized that the real love story wasn't about finding the perfect person or having an intense, all-consuming connection. It was about finding herself first, learning to be whole on her own, and then choosing to share that wholeness with someone else. Every touch, every glance, every breath belonged to her now. They weren't lost in someone else or dependent on someone else's presence. They were hers, fully and completely. And from that place of independence and self-love, she could offer Alex something much better than desperate need. She could offer him real, healthy, sustainable love. The kind that enhanced both their lives instead of consuming them. The kind that lasted not because they couldn't survive apart, but because they chose to be together even though they could. And that, Maya thought, was worth all the pain of learning it.